When it comes to affordable, reliable, and more importantly, practical motoring, the Toyota Wigo nameplate had always been a staple here in the Philippines. The previous generation one, it was about okay, it did its purpose, but it wasn't particularly good. But what about this new one? This is the all-new 2025 Toyota Wigo G. In this video, let's just see how much of an improvement it has over the previous generation and how good of a car it is in itself. From the exterior, you'll immediately notice that the all-new Toyota Wigo looks completely different from the previous generation, no surprise there. But more importantly, it has grown so much in terms of size. If you look at this maybe from afar, you might even think that it is the Toyota Yaris hatchback. But yeah, look at the design right here over at the front. It has a more flat out nose. You get LED headlamps right here, and you get 14-inch rims by the side. Now, this being the top of the line G variant, you do get the power folding and power adjustable rear view mirrors, but do take note that you can only get that in this variant, which is kind of odd for a car that was released, well, not too long ago. Now for the rear right here, again, this being the top of the line G variant, you do get some sort of a spoiler on the top. You do get a rear wiper, and you also get parking sensors right here. Not only that, there's even a reverse camera somewhere down here. Now, when you open up this tailgate, you also notice that space for such a tiny car is honestly pretty impressive. It's pretty deep, it's pretty wide. Not exactly the most deep in terms of like the length of it though, like towards the cabin. But yeah, in case you do have to expand that, you can fold down those rear seats, but they only fold down as one set. You can't fold them 60/40. There is a false floor underneath too, and that houses a space saver spare tire. Now for the powertrain, the all-new Toyota Wigo uses still a 1-liter naturally aspirated gasoline engine, making a pretty measly 67 horsepower and 89 Newton meters of torque compared to a CVT. Now on paper, that really doesn't sound like much, but you do have to understand that this is still, despite the size increase, a pretty tiny car overall, and it is also pretty light. So you'll see later on in the driving segment just my thoughts on this engine. Also, in terms of fuel economy, I said that this is an affordable and practical mode of transportation, right? Well, it really is, because inside the city in extremely heavy city traffic, you can return about 8.3 kilometers per liter, and on the highway, you'll return 21 kilometers per liter. Moving inside the Toyota Wigo G, first we check the door. Okay, surprisingly, that is so much better than I expected, and it definitely is a huge upgrade compared to the old Toyota Wigo. So anyway, inside here, despite everything being upgraded and everything being new, you still should expect a very basic interior. So you get hard touch plastics everywhere. Nothing wrong with that given its price point. But what is good right here is that you do get a 9-inch touchscreen, which does come with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and even a reverse camera. I just do wish that there are like lines on there, guidelines, but no, it doesn't. But still, that is still more than enough. You get these air vents, which yeah, it feels pretty flimsy. Again, that's to be expected at this price range. But now you do get push to start button, and you even have a digital AC system. So it's not climate control, but at least it's digital. It looks a lot more modern. Your instrument cluster, well, nothing to fuff about. It's just very basic. There is a tiny chip computer right there. The steering wheel is only tilt adjustable, not telescopic. You do get buttons on it though for audio controls, and also unfortunately you do not get cruise control with this one. Now that aside, there are 2 cup holders by the center, and yeah, that's about it. Oh right, the seats, they're so much more comfortable compared to before. Look at the bolsterings that they put. They actually feel kind of sporty. So for medium journeys, you should be perfectly fine with these seats. They should have more than enough support for your body. Now for the rear seats, as usual, door 2. That's honestly not too bad either. So back here, you'll be surprised because space is honestly pretty generous despite the size of this vehicle. But this had always been a trait of the Toyota Wigo because they used very thin seats. But for this one, honestly, the seats, they don't feel that thin, yet you still have pretty good amounts of legroom. They even put like a cutout behind this like driver seat and the passenger seat, and unlike a lot of even more expensive vehicles, you actually get map pockets on both sides, which is pretty good. Now, you don't really get rear air vents right here, but because the car is tiny, those front AC vents come all the way here, so more than enough. Don't worry about it. Now, what I'm not a big fan of are the seats, right? Because yes, they don't feel as bad as before in terms of lacking in support, but yeah, they're okay. That's the best way to describe them. They're okay. They're seats. their seats. Now, seating 3 people back here, I would say it's also doable because, I mean, these door cards, they are pretty thin, so you do have some sort of feeling of width in here. You can kind of squeeze a third person in here. I do wish that this center tunnel could be a little bit lower though, because it feels a little bit high. Nonetheless, the footwells are pretty large, and you can even like stretch out and like stick your feet under the front passenger seat. Strangely, not for the driver's seat though, because there seems to be yet another metal bracket on it. So now we get to drive the Toyota Wigo G, and driving this vehicle is honestly pretty surprising, very surprising really, because in this job of mine I get pretty jaded with a lot of cars, and I get to drive a lot of nice cars, so I didn't really have that much hopes for an entry-level small hatchback. I've also been able to drive the previous generation Wigo, and that, well, it served its purpose as a vehicle. It wasn't exactly inspiring in any way, nor fun to drive, nor very comfortable. But this new Toyota Wigo is. You see, there is more than enough power from this 1-liter engine, even if there's like 3 people inside this vehicle. And once you do punch it, it can really go. Again, it's not fast, but it definitely is more than adequate. It does seem to struggle when it comes to the transmission when you are going uphill, although there is a quick fix to that. Simply put it into the S mode, like the sport mode, and yes, that will get you up that hill. But hills aside, this really is enough. It definitely feels much faster than the old Wigo. I don't know why. And the transmission tuning is also so much better compared to before. Next would be the comfort in here, and the old Wigo wasn't particularly comfortable. Yes, it dealt with bumps pretty okay, but it had a pretty short wheelbase, so you do feel all the bumps generally, especially if the roads are very choppy. But for this one, since they've increased the wheelbase, it's so much better now. While you do still feel the bumps, they don't hurt, they don't really jar you too much, and quite frankly, I would say that this is about as comfortable, if not more comfortable, compared to a Toyota Vios. Now, when it comes to vibrations though, yes, that's where it does struggle a little bit, because you do have a 3-cylinder engine, which is inherently imbalanced. So especially when you're at idle and you have the gears selected into drive, you will feel a lot of vibrations. Easy fix, put it into neutral, just like a lot of cars from the early 2000s and the late 90s. Steering comfort, it's also pretty light. It is a small car after all. You have a steering that it's not exactly the most communicative, but that's not really the point of a Wigo. You're not supposed to drive it sportily. Just a great daily cruiser. Speaking of daily cruising this though, if you do have to go like far distances on a day-to-day basis, maybe you should look at a different vehicle, because this really is a city cruiser, not really a highway cruiser. So when you are going at highway speeds, while it is relatively quiet compared to the old Wigo, there still is a substantial amount of wind noise and tire noise in here, and the engine does struggle to go above 100. So if you do have to do some overtakes, you really have to squeeze it and punch it hard just to be able to do those overtakes. At the same time, you do hear a lot of whine from that engine once you are on that speed limit mark. So yeah, that's just one thing to consider. So is the all-new Toyota Wigo any better compared to its predecessor? Well, definitely. It's so much bigger now, it's so much more refined, and it feels like a much better car overall. Now the question, is it a good car in itself? Well, at its price of 729,000 pesos, I would say that yes, it is a very good car to meet your practical, basic point A to point B transportation needs. There might be other cars in this segment that can give you something far more modern, electric options, for example, like the BYD Seagull. But if you're looking for something that is safe and you're a little bit more traditional, then the Toyota Wigo G might still be the car for you.